am powerless over drugs and alcohol. My name is Arlene, and today I choose recovery. Oh, hello, friends. I love when you say hi to me because it makes me know that I'm where I belong. So, I'm going to start out by sharing something with you that if you know me well, you may know. But if you don't know me well, you probably don't know about me. So keep it under your hat, so to speak. Now, my guilty pleasure is that this supposedly like hardcore alcohol and drug addicted recovery chick really loves Disney movies. Okay, I love Disney movies. Am I the only one? I can't help it. I really love Disney movies. You don't want to admit it, do you? Yeah. Come on, you admit it, right? Yeah, online, raise your hand if you like, even if you're in your own house, raise your hand. Let me tell you why I love Disney. It's because everything always works out in the end. You ever notice that? If you watch a Disney flick, I want to go through some of my very favorite Disney movies in no particular order with a summary of their plot lines, and you will see exactly what I am talking about. Let us start out with a classic, The Little Mermaid. Yeah, aw. Okay, let me tell you the plot. In this movie, a 16-year-old mermaid girl named Ariel buys a charm from a witch that turns Ariel's fins into legs and feet so she can make a human man that she barely knows named Eric fall in love with her. No comment on whether or not this is actually a healthy message for little girls, okay? Probably not so much, but hey, let me continue, okay? Now, if Eric does not kiss Ariel within 3 days, Ariel is going to become the witch's prisoner. And, of course, in the end, everything works out. Eric and Ariel destroy the witch. They get married. All the people the witch in prison get set free. And all of them, let's say together it's on the screen, go, they live happily ever after. The Little Mermaid rocks, right? It works out. Here's another one I love. It's a sleeper, Tarzan. Tarzan. Anybody love Tarzan? And like, ugh. Okay, listen, the plot. The plot of this movie. Well, listen up. A family is shipwrecked and killed by wild animals. So far, so good for a nice family night of fun, right? Anyway, they're killed, and their infant son is raised up by gorillas. Until years later, a female gorilla scientist named Jane and her father show up on the island to study gorillas, and some really bad people show up on the island too who want to sell the gorillas, and that's not good. Say dun dun dun. Okay, good. However, the bad guys get captured. Jane and Tarzan fall in love. They live on the gorilla island forever. And they, along with all the gorillas, you guessed it, say it with me, it's on the screen, let's say it again, go. They live happily ever after. I just love Tarzan. Tarzan is good. I can watch it over and over again. Now let's talk about Mulan. Anybody a Mulan fan? Yes, I love Mulan. Mulan is a wonderful movie. Okay, let me tell you what it's about. It's about a Chinese girl named Mulan who pretends to be a boy to fight for China against the evil Huns because in the year 500, China is a very sexist country and doesn't allow girls to fight in wars. Another message that is wrong on so many levels, I cannot even begin to address them all, but anyway. In this movie, not only does Mulan save China practically single-handedly, but she falls in love with a handsome officer. And you guessed it, all of China and Mulan and her man live, say it with me, come on, they live happily ever after. But hands down, one more. Okay, my favorite. This is my favorite now, and I won't tell you anymore. The Emperor's New Groove. Thank you. Thank you. It's the best. Okay, let me tell you about it. The Inca Empire is ruled by a selfish 18-year-old emperor named Cusco, who gets turned into a llama by his assistant who wants the young emperor's job. Now, Emperor Cusco, the llama, has to rely on a peasant named Pacha, who Cusco has previously treated unfairly to help him. And I'll bet you can't guess what happens at the end of this amazingly excellent movie. You guessed it, Pacha, Emperor Cusco, the Inca Empire, everyone, one more time, let's all join in. They live happily ever after. You gotta love Disney movies, right? Don't you just wish? Don't you just wish that everything in your life just always turned out happily ever after? Don't you? I do. I've spent a whole lot of my life trying to get that to happen. And it doesn't seem to ever exactly happen for me. I just cannot tell you the energy I have expended trying to arrange everything and plan everything so that romance and finance and housing and education and jobs and kids and just about any other thing you can think of, for instance, a pandemic with a COVID-19 virus that just wants to keep mutating. I can't tell you how much time I've spent trying to get things to turn out the way I want it to. I've spent a lot of energy arranging things that just won't stay arranged. See, I want to live happily ever after. I want it to be a Disney movie. The folks in these movies, they all control every scene, right? Everybody who writes these movies control the scene so that nothing bad ever happens in the end, only good things happen. I want that kind of control for myself. I have strived for control my whole life. In fact, I have been a bit of a control freak. A control freak. Yes, how about you? How about you? Any other control freaks out there? Yeah, just a few? I thought so. Now here's the seductive thing. The seductive thing about trying to fit life into my mold of what it should be is that sometimes my efforts actually do work. Sometimes they work. When I was using drugs, sometimes I could keep from using if I absolutely had to. Sometimes I could keep from drinking if I had to act well for a family event, or if I had gotten my friends mad at me by my drinking antics the night before. Sometimes when it came to my codependency, I could actually control my kids' behavior for a hot minute or make my man do what I wanted him to do for a few days, particularly if I threatened or promised all of them some reward or punishment. Sometimes control worked for me, and I felt like I was winning at life when this happened. Sweet, right? But the problem came in, for me, when my attempted control didn't always work. In fact, most of the time, I didn't find myself living happily ever after in my own control. Most of the time, things didn't turn out the way I planned or wanted. And people I was trying to control, they did whatever they felt like it. Addictions I was trying to control, they just had their way with me. No matter how many bottles of sanitizer I went through, a pandemic virus did whatever it felt like it. You know, and I'm going to go out on a limb and venture to say that if you ended up here tonight, in person or online, your personal efforts at living happily ever after on your own power and control probably haven't worked any better than mine have over the long haul. So tonight, I want us to spend a little time talking about control as it pertains to our recovery programs, because no matter what you've come here recovering from, whether it's codependency or sexual addiction or compulsion or food addiction or drugs or whatever else you got, being a control freak is a killer for those of us in recovery, because control goes completely against what we need to do in the step 3 of our program, which says this. It's on the screen. Read it with me. I just did a minute ago, but let's read it again. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. See, turning our will and lives over to God goes directly against our selfish tendency to seek people, places, things, situations, and circumstances to line up for just me, 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 me. Control is all about me and my own self-sufficiency. Step 3 is about trusting in God rather than myself and accepting life on life's terms. 2 very, very different perspectives there. Very different. Now, I can tell you, a self-sufficient control freak who isn't willing to let go of their efforts at control cannot recover. And there's a reason for this, too. It's because our own efforts at control they're always going to fail us. They're a doomed effort They don't work. And why? Why have my efforts at controlling everything failed? It's because, listen up, this is profound, okay? This is a profound thing. It's because only God has control over everything. Let me say that again. It's on the screen. And these are the fill-ins, too, on your handout. My efforts at controlling everything have failed because only God has complete control over everything. See, when I try to control life, I'm trying to do an impossible thing. And this is a hard concept to grasp, at least it was for me. But what might help you is to think of something truly impossible. I mean, controlling things is impossible. Let's think of something like outlandishly impossible to do, like, I don't know, like turning yourself invisible. Okay, turning yourself invisible. Yeah, you laugh, right? But I mean, take a few years of your life, some weeks, hours, days, years, trying to actually turn yourself invisible. Do that. And you will probably easily see the ridiculous effort of trying to do an impossible thing. Well, now apply that same thing to try to control the uncontrollable stuff of your life. This is a simple but profound truth to learn, that only God has complete control over everything. And I had to learn it. I had to learn it for my recovery to work, and I hope that y'all can learn it tonight as well. So your recovery from whatever brought you here can work too, and you can get on with living life on life's terms and stop trying to control things that you can't control. You know, Jesus, when he was on the planet trying to teach all sorts of self-sufficient people like you and me to trust in him rather than their own control freak selves, as he was trying to show them how to follow his teachings rather than whatever they felt was right, well, Jesus told them a story to help them to visualize what he was trying to say. And this is what Jesus tried to help them by saying, recorded in the Bible, the Gospel of Matthew 7:24 through 27, goes like this. Jesus said, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it didn't fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." See, when I'm trying to control everything in my universe with my own self-sufficient thinking, this is like building my house on a foundation of sand. Because eventually, there's going to be a storm. In fact, I would venture to say that we're all in a bit of a storm now, what with COVID and all the fear and anger around all of that going around, right? And notice Jesus doesn't say, if the rains and winds come. He says, the rain came and the winds blew. The storms came. They came. The winds blew. They blew. That's life. And like Jesus' story predicted, just like his story predicted, at the end of my drinking and using career, after all my own efforts at running my own life had betrayed me, that's when my house fell with a crash. And why is that? Because I foolishly built my house on sand. I built it on my own ideas, my own thinking, my own control. You know, maybe you guys can take a look at some of your own best efforts at running your own life. How'd it go? I mean, all they did was get you here, right? And more than that, how about what's twisting you up right now? What's twisting you up right now? See, that stuff, that's you. The sand is you. What you know, your smarts, your own resources, your feelings, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. You know, I've hung around with some of you, and you've hung around with me. To build a house on that foundation, well, let's just say to call it sand is probably being kind. Jesus actually calls it foolish, okay? But then there's the rock. Jesus offers himself up as the rock on which we can build our life. We can trust him with our life and will, and the rain and the wind won't knock down our lives because we've got a strong foundation under us, and that foundation is God. God who was and is and always will be. God who created it all and sustains it all. That's the rock, God. So on one hand, there's us bumbling around, right? Making mistakes, turning in circles, changing our minds, basically making fools of ourselves, worrying about things we have no control over, trying to change things that simply aren't changeable. And then on the other hand, there's God, who is God, solid, Savior, Comforter, powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, who has all control anyways. Sand versus rock. What do we prefer? Rock or sand? When it comes to the foundation on which to build something as important as our life. You know, today, right now, it makes sense to me to trust in limitless Jesus rather than my own limited self-sufficiency. And although I don't do it perfectly by far, I do keep getting better and better at trusting Jesus with my life as I stay in recovery. But I can tell you that there was a time when I didn't think that I wanted to trust Jesus as a foundation, him being a rock or otherwise. And here's why. I want to be honest with you, and maybe you can relate. This is why. Plain and simple, I didn't want to trust Jesus with my life because I was afraid if I turned my life and my will over to him, I wouldn't get what I wanted. He wouldn't do what I told him to. If I let go of trying to control my own life, if I stop my self-sufficiency and let Jesus have my life, if I stop controlling everything, then I was afraid he wouldn't give me the things that would make me happy. He wouldn't follow my directions. He wouldn't make it all go Disney happily ever after for me. I didn't want him to let him have my life because how could I be sure what he'd do with it? Anyone relate to that? Anybody? Yeah, I hear a couple of yeahs. But here's the weird and funny part of that thinking. I actually thought I was letting God have my life or not letting him have it. That's a control freak, right? When in reality, remember the fill in the blank from before? God already had control over everything, including me, because he's God. I wasn't letting God do anything. He had all the control anyway. Duh. So what I needed to do in step 3 was to let go of playing God and accept that only God is God. And there are your next fill-ins on your handout. In step 3, I let go of playing God and accept that only God is God. You know, it's one thing to say that only God has all control, not me. But it's quite another to accept that and give into it. So in step 3, I align myself to the truth that only God is God and I'm not. And I submit to God and stop struggling against him because otherwise I fight against God who already has all control. And how insane is that? Can anybody say yeah? Absolutely. Accepting that God is God and I was not God was a struggle for me, but I eventually got over that. But it took a little longer for me to trust in God to do a better job than I thought I could do for myself if only he let me have the reins for a little while. And maybe you're the same. Believing that building my life on the rock of Jesus was actually better for me than trying to control my own horizontal and vertical, especially when what Jesus did wasn't what I would have planned or wanted, that took a while for me. I had to see some benefits. Before I actually began to trust Jesus to be my life's rock. But luckily, there are some instant benefits. There are some instant benefits I received from releasing control. And even from the first, when I try to do it, these benefits start happening immediately. And here's what I received, and you can too. The first benefit I remember receiving from giving up my useless effort at control, being a control freak, was this: relief. Relief. That was the first benefit. World off my shoulders. You know, it takes a lot of strain and effort in playing God. There's a lot of stress of trying to be in control by playing God. I was angry a lot while playing God. I was frustrated a lot when I was playing God. I was sad a lot when I was playing God. It was depressing to play God. Releasing the steering wheel of my life and climbing into the back seat made the ride so much less stressful. I didn't have nearly as much to worry about. So that's the first benefit, relief. Here's another benefit of letting go and control that you can get immediately, and it's peace. It's peace. You know what? I saw that the world went just fine without me directing it. In fact, everyone around me seemed to be so much happier. They liked it so much better when I wasn't trying to control everything. The more life went on without me directing it, the more I trusted Jesus to be the rock. And the more I became aware of when I was playing God, the more I stepped back from that role. And surprisingly, when I did that, the less I struggled with anything, including my addiction. And amazingly, the more peace I began to have. And you can too. And then the rain came, and the wind blew, just like Jesus promised in the scripture that we just read. And that's when I found that there was another benefit, a good one, from releasing control, and it was this: strength. Strength. I found I could ride out financial insecurity because my house was on the rock and not on the sand of my own ideas and plans. I found out I could ride out death and divorce because my house was on the rock and not on the sand of my own strategies and tactics. And I found out I could ride out COVID-19 because my house was on the rock and not on my own control. I found I could ride out the storms because the rock was solid, even when I didn't have a clue of what to do. And that's when I really began to trust in Jesus. My strength became Jesus. It was then that I knew that working the third step was a really good idea. I made a decision to turn my life and will over to the care of God. You know, those of us who are self-sufficient control freaks in recovery have had our time at thinking that life should be easier than it is. Can you say yeah? We've wondered why, like a Disney movie. Our lives just can't be happily ever after all the time. Why do we suffer with addictions, afflictions, compulsive behaviors? Why is COVID-19 ruining my life, causing so much misery and hatred everywhere? Why is all this happening to me? Why is everything so hard? But I've come to realize that learning to face hardships and difficulties and struggles with Jesus as our rock, that's a good thing. What a good thing, because there's always going to be storms. Right? The storms came, the winds blew. Things aren't happily ever after. Real life isn't Disney. And it makes us stronger to know we have Jesus as our rock. We can face all things when it's God who's on our side rather than just our own feeble efforts at trying to figure things out. Jesus said when he was in the world, it's written in John 16:33. It's on the screen. Read it with me. It's so pertinent today. Go. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you'll have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. See, life is life. Everyone has their share of troubles, but even in those times, with specific concerns, whatever your specific concerns are, about your jobs, your kids, your finances, your health, all the other things that come along with not being able to control the universe, even in these troubled times, especially in times of trouble, as we work our recovery programs in the good and the bad and the happy and the sad, Jesus is saying, he's saying, I'm still the one to trust in. Trust in me. You know, Jesus as our rock, as our foundation, we don't have to get bitter. We can trust that he's going to give us peace in the difficulties. And the bottom line is, we don't have to return back to where we came from. We don't have to return back with Jesus as our rock to our addictions, our compulsive behaviors. We don't really have to waste our time trying to control what is not ours to control, because we don't want sand. We want solid rock. And here's the truth. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. Let's stand to pray as the band comes forward. Jesus, it's so great to be here with you and one another tonight. It really is. And we just pray that you keep us free another day from our addictions and compulsive behaviors, whatever it is that brought us here. Today, once again, or maybe for the first time, we turn our life and our will over to you. We know you've always had all the control, and we rest in the peace of that. So today, break our denial, break our chains of our perceived control. Break these chains. They represent our sickness, and we're here trying to get well. And we need you, Jesus. Our own efforts, they fail miserably, but you got it going on. So, Jesus, help us to live one day at a time with you as you break those chains of control. Begin to show us those benefits of relief and peace and the strength we need. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Band's going to play a song. Altar is available for some control freaks like me to come and pray. And if you need somebody to help you encounter your Savior and to break the bondage in you, you just raise your hand. Somebody will come and pray with you.